Hey, it's Jeremy from jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, and I share my creative process here with you live on the internet. If you'd like to support this channel, get additional behind-the-scenes blog posts, and a Patreon-exclusive live stream once a month, you can go to Patreon you can go to my Patreon at patreon.com/GERIMI. That's my Patreon campaign. You can, for as little as $2 a month, you can support the channel and all of my creative progress and process. If you'd like to read some of my comic books for free, you can go to news.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comics, or if you read on Amazon Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That'll forward you to my Amazon author page. So, let's see. I see Cupidon in the chat. Hi, how you doing? Thanks for showing up. Let's see here. All right. Well, let us get started. When last we spoke, we were working on, which I'm still working on, my Alice in Wonderland pieces. And right here, I'm going to show you how I ended up at the image we're looking at now. Because my original plan was to do color thumbnails for all of them before going to the final piece. That said, in the process of doing the thumbnails, the main thing I started with was working on values. So let me click back through, turn off some of these color layers. Well, I've just got one color layer on. Originally, I had done, go all the way back. So I had started with doing a value study for the White Rabbit. And I decided it makes sense, probably because I'm still sort of figuring out this piece as I go along, to work the White Rabbit all the way to the end, get it to where I want it to look, then go back and do color thumbnails for the others, the Mad Hatter, the Cheshire Cat, and the White Queen, to do value studies for all of these, do color thumbnails on all of these based on the White Rabbit one. So first I did this one, but it felt very sort of indistinct and hazy, you know. So I went back and did another one on top of it, and I sort of tried to tighten up just the, it's minor differences, but the fact that it's less airbrushy and more of me clearly defining the rim light that's coming around the edge of the White Rabbit, more light on the hand, and just trying to more strongly define the silhouette of the White Rabbit, which is challenging in the fact that he's got a dark background in the cornfield around him, but his head is highlighted by the sunset. So it's sort of like a combination of a dark background and a light background, and then trying to figure out the best way to play with the foreground figure. Now, once I did that, because I'm never happy with anything, which, that's pretty much what it comes down to. So I came back and I decided, well, let me do a couple more thumbnails. Because if anything, thumbnails just give you the flexibility to really think through a problem and try and make sure you have all of the answers before you move forward. And it's funny because the thing I found at the end is that I still don't have the answers. Even where I'm at now, I'm still figuring out this piece as I go. So you're going to just watch me fumble and stumble and fall down steps, but a lot of artists don't necessarily show that part of their process. We all like to think that each piece emerges fully formed and brilliant and perfect. Not that what I'm making is brilliant or perfect, but even when something comes out, whenever something comes out well, we like to present that, yes, I sweated and labored on this, and here it is. Here's this beautiful thing I made. The sweat and the labor and the wrong turns and the blind alleys and all of the mistakes and back and forth, I think that's what makes an art piece. And I don't necessarily think as many artists show all of that. So I'm trying to just be more transparent. I did this thumbnail, which I liked a little bit more. But I started thinking about the fact that I was concerned that the silhouette didn't read as well. So I did another thumbnail. Now this one is muddier, but I wanted to make it more low key. And I was trying to sort of go for the idea of almost like having the White Rabbit sort of emerging from the darkness. So with this one, there's actually less contrast, but then just making most of the contrast in the outline around the White Rabbit. And I liked it, but when I squinted at it and looked at it, I could see that it was just too low key, and it didn't. It wasn't that it was too low key. There just was not enough contrast in this piece, and I really needed to up that to make it to really sell it. So, and part of this is also like what I was thinking is that I was gonna have the sunset and have the background. I was kind of inverting warm and cool colors. Instead, have the sunset and the background be very warm, and then have him having this cool bluish light coming up at him from the front. And then I tried one where I said, you know what, let's go for the full-on horror underlighting. So just really making it so now he really pops, he really reads, and the light is coming from underneath. You know, this one I think actually reads the best, but there's a problem. And I'll show you, I'm just going to tell you what the problem is now. The problem is the inks don't agree with this lighting scheme. I'll show you more of what I mean when I go over to the ink piece. But I was looking at this and the lighting that's going on here, that, oh, I see El Gargoyle in the chat. And he said, he says, "Hail Jeremy, your work is incredible. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. By the way, I saw your email about that copy of Morningstar not reaching you, that Amazon may have lost the book. Shoot me another email and let me know whether you got it or not. And if you didn't, then we'll work out a way that I'll get you a copy. So I want to make sure you get that. I appreciate you supporting my work. Last thing I want is for you to get left hanging. So, but also, thank you for showing up for the stream. Welcome. So yeah, the lighting scheme on this last one is my favorite, but the ink drawing doesn't agree with this. The ink drawing, you know, I would definitely have put harder. Actually, you know what? It's probably for the best that the ink drawing didn't necessarily agree with it, because I realized that all of the areas that are sort of mid-gray around the shoulder, I probably would have gone full-on black, which is an argument for me doing more of an open line, more of a European Tintin style, instead of like always putting in, you know, shadows and hard blacks. But that's a little bit of a longer creative process discussion. That's more of how I'm going to move forward with work in the future. And I'm still figuring out things. I'm always changing and evolving the way that I light things, the way that I compose my pages, the way that I spot blacks. So in these couple, I realized that while this last one was my favorite, the one that agrees with the lighting style, I mean the one that agrees with the ink style is the first one I did. I see Amar's in the chat. Hey, how you doing, man? Thanks for showing up. So let me show you what I did in terms of the thumbnails. When I first started, before even this one that's a little bit cleaned up, I had made a color layer, and I had sort of colored sort of a gauzy. This was me going for that blue foreground light, and the background being red, you know, with it fading to purple at the top of the sunset. And it has sort of an eerie feel. And I think that the blue foreground light is kind of what makes it feel creepy. So I started by trying this lighting scheme. When I switched to doing the foreground lighting, excuse me a little bit, got a little bit of a, I've had a cough for months. I really probably should go see a doctor because this does not seem to be going away. I know, Amar, echinacea, and I forgot the oil that you mentioned, but yes, I have been taking some echinacea, but for some reason I think it might be some sort of like infection or something in my chest, because that doesn't seem to be knocking it down. Let's see here. So lighting. The first one, now after I working out the values, then I went back to color. And this first one, I thought, okay, it's not horrible. I don't hate it. I mean, I like it, but I always try to push and go for something even more fantastic than just, oh, I just like it and that's okay. When I moved to the being lit from the foreground, going for more of a horror lighting, I tried this version, which looks a little bit muddy here and chaotic. There's actually another color layer I had that I deleted. Why is this not? There we go. So, to be honest, this color layer doesn't really go with this one. This color layer goes more with this piece. So, this one, I still don't feel like it's completely finished. It was really just me switching. And I decided to switch back from the... Oh, I see Iron Rocks is in the chat. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for popping in. Happy New Year's. Happy New Year's. Amar says, oh, in terms of my cough, he says, please do go into the doctor. I had the same thing. I let it go on too long. I think it led to my immune system being low. Yeah, I probably need to look into that. You are right. Got to take care of your health first. If you're not healthy, you can't create. So, in this one, I still didn't necessarily, cancel. The selected layer is hidden. What are you... Oh, I see what it's saying. It's asking me if I want to move anything around with that layer. No, I do not. So I still didn't necessarily finish out all of this piece. But Cupidon says the first one was better. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. So in this one, I was going in and I decided instead of doing the warm background and cool foreground, I went to, well, what you would normally do. Like, I just thought, let me see what happens if I do the obvious with, like, warm foreground, horror lighting with cool background. So, I tried this one, and I still didn't finish it completely. But, in fact, even looking at this, I'm kind of like, let me just go in here with a little bit of the orange and grab this orange. Make sure I got the correct layer selected. Just finish that up. I don't even know why I'm doing this, because when I show you the last thumbnail, you'll see that there's not much point in me even really finishing this. But I guess the desire to finish it is just blatant curiosity. I always like to see, doing all of these iterations is like me playing a one big game of what if. Just constantly saying, well, I can try this, I can try that. Let me just explore all of these possibilities. So, yeah, I don't know if that necessarily improved anything or not. But the reason why I didn't finish this piece is because I thought, similar to the question, this was about the time when I realized this underlit horror lighting doesn't necessarily agree with the inks, which, let me flip over real quick to the ink piece. Nope, I'm not going to flip over to the ink piece yet. Because, well, actually, who cares? It's iPad. I can go back and forth. So let me turn this background color off. So these are the inks for the piece. And as you can see, there are shadows. Let me add an extra layer just for notation. But as you can see, like around the, wow, that's too small of a brush. So as you can see around the hand, under the arm, like all of the lighting on this indicates an above light as opposed to an under rim light. And I probably would have inked this differently with thicker lines up here, around the upper edge. And that's not to say I couldn't go in here and erase these lines and change the lighting. But usually I try to stay consistent to the lighting that I've indicated once I draw it. And it seems wonky and it's disruptive, I think, to the eye when you have lighting that's contrary to what's going on with the inks. That said, hang on. There we go. That gesture to clear the screen, still get used to it. It doesn't always work all the time when I do it. So what here we go. So when I went back to this, I realized that part of the problem of me doing the thumbnails the way I did is that the pieces, the inked drawings, have a very different sense of value just by virtue of the fact that there's black ink in there than the pencil sketches. The pencil sketches, I was comping in the colors as though I was doing a painting. You know, soft values, contrast, color temperature. When doing it over an ink drawing, there's a very distinct graphic statement that ink has, and the composition of having very solid blacks, not even values and like dark values and light values, but just black in there. It changes the composition significantly. So I realized I really need to do these thumbnails over the inks. And if anything, the fact that it's a hard line drawing gives me a little bit of permission to not necessarily ink it, or not necessarily color it like a with as much rendering, but also to go more of a flat poster look, to do it, you know, for lack of a better term, more of a comic book style flat color rendering, or lack of rendering as the case may be. And I think the last thing that I did before I hopped over to the inks was just me saying, all right, what if I start as a starting point? My base is just a hard red, and then doing him in a kind of an albino white because he's the white rabbit. Just do it with this weird, surreal, creepy color palette. Figure out what else I need to have lit in here, and then slowly build on top of that. So that's what I'm going to give a try. We're going to go with just red and white on the white rabbit, and then see what values I need to add in. And again, this is something that's different from what I've been trying to think. Generally, I've been trying to think values first, and then do the actual what color is this object second. In this particular case, I think that starting with the local color might work better. Particularly because the inks, to a certain degree, imply a lot of these values already. So right now I've got this one open, and I'm going to come back through and add, let me turn this layer back on, background color layer. So we're going to start with this guy and just work in other values as we go. I'm sure that not all of the background behind the corn is going to be red. I'm sure I'm going to add some sort of gradient in here for the sunset, and add sort of a light cast around his head. But we'll also see how that lighting will affect the white of the white rabbit. So let me rename this. Why is the keyboard acting weird? Okay. Let's bring this layer below here. All right. So and I'm still getting used to making art on the iPad Pro. I have to give a big shout out to some videos I've been watching. The comic book creator, a colorist named K. Michael Russell, or Kurt, and his YouTube channel is Color with Kurt, I believe, and I've been watching a bunch of his videos, specifically on working on the iPad, and it just reminds me of how much more I have to learn about coloring. But his videos have been extremely useful to me in terms of working digitally and coloring in terms of how it works with narrative. So if you're looking for some help in that area, I would definitely highly recommend his video. Now, one thing that I have not looked up was how to create straight lines, and That is something that I sorely need to do. You know, it's funny. There's little things like just taking the time to read through the instruction manual for Procreate, the user guide. I have not done that yet, and that would excuse me. I think that would help tremendously because I'm sure there's a ton of little tricks and moves that would give me a big helping hand just in terms of, oh, this is an easier way to do whatever it is I'm trying to do. And I'm one of those people who usually when I get a new program, I like to read through the whole user manual. I just have not had time because I've been a bit overwhelmed. Trying to spend time writing, spending time learning how to use, you know, I mean, reading the user manual is part of learning how to use this program, but then I've been watching a lot of videos, trying to learn that way. Trying to find time to get more figure drawing done. It's just like, you know, we all get overwhelmed sometimes, and I think the last live stream that I had where I said, you know, the one that was titled, you know, giving yourself permission not to grind, to a certain degree, that's sort of the other the other, you know, it's like a double-edged sword. That yes, by giving yourself permission not to constantly be running at 1,000 miles an hour, you might have a little bit more peace of mind and feel a little bit healthier. But at the same time, you're not getting done all the things that you want to get done, and I definitely am feeling that. Like this year is off to a slower start, and that's intentional. I want to take my time, make better art, figure out if I'm going to be changing my workflow and incorporating more of these digital tools into my process, like being thoughtful about how I'm doing it. That's another thing. It's one thing to be thoughtful. I also tend to over plan, spend too much time trying to figure out all of the different steps. Again, like reading an entire user manual before using a program. If you haven't noticed by my rambling style, I do have a tendency to overthink things. But I will tell you that I have a bit of an advantage simply in knowing that red on white is a very striking color combination in general, so it does make me feel like I'm off to a good start. I don't know why I'm doing all that in. I just need an outline so that I can just do a color drop, which is what Procreate refers to. The when you're using Photoshop or other programs, the paint bucket, in Procreate it's just a color drop, which if I connect this line there, you just grab the color you want, you just drop it into a filled area, and it fills it up. Again, learned that from Color with Kurt from his channel. And I'm sure it's something that anybody that uses iPad, you know, the iPad for coloring, is like, yeah, I figured that out. That's like one of the obvious things. But I am playing catch up with Procreate 'cause it's been a long time where I had it but wasn't necessarily using it. I really liked it, but because I lacked an Apple Pencil, I couldn't take full advantage of everything the program has to offer. So, playing a bit of catch up now. Some questions in the chat. I was sort of wandering and wool gazing. Okay, I can't even pronounce this username. I apologize for it. If you have a nickname that you want me to refer to as, I would be happy to do so. But The question is, how do you practice your writing skill? Do you read a lot or do you just write? The way that they say that in order to be a writer, and I got this, I think, from Stephen King's book on writing, is you have to do two things. You have to read a lot and write a lot. So I will tell you that I do not read as much as I should. Ideally, I should always have a novel going at any given time and a piece of nonfiction for research going at any given time, reading wise. And then in terms of writing, one of the things I want to start doing, and I hesitate to use the word New Year's resolution, but one of the things that I want to begin doing is just make sure that I write every day for like just 15 minutes. And it is challenging when you're somebody who also draws to try to find, drawing takes so much time that it's hard to find the time to commit to the writing process. But the one thing that I have learned in completing my comic book Morning Star, which is not complete yet, but I'm working on the last issue, is that with the amount of time that it takes for me to draw a graphic novel, it really has to be a story that I want to tell. And the first graphic novel I published was very much a story that I wanted to tell. Morning Star, also very much a story I wanted to tell. But going forward, if I'm going to invest the time of years into drawing this book, it has to be something I really, really want to do. And I feel like the quality has to be better than the writing I've done up till now. And that's not to say that I think my writing is horrible, but I think most people are critical of their own work. That's how you grow, by being able to, much as I show you with my artwork and me, critiquing my drawing process. I think writing is harder to critique than drawing. But that said, I still definitely have a lot of growth and a lot of learning to do. Let me put it this way. I spend a lot of time critiquing my own artwork, and I feel like I have 10 times, 100 times more growth and work that I need to do to improve as a writer. So I'm even farther behind in writing than I am in art. So that said, in terms of how in an ideal world, which I have not been sticking with, but what I do is right now, I have 3 projects that are kind of on deck for me to write. One is a sequel to my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods, so sort of a psychological thriller. It's got sort of a supernatural spy feel to it, conspiracy theory story. Then I have a reinterpretation of a mythological story. That's probably the one I'm the most excited about. And then I have another story that's sort of a dystopian science fiction story that kind of deals with discrimination. And that one is a story that in the world that we live in now, with a lot of intolerance, it feels like it's a very important story. And that I think that I would not have come up with the idea if we didn't live in the political climate we live in now, with a lot of people just judging each other, hating each other, being hurtful towards each other. With all of these stories, what I'm doing is I have like a Word document that's open where I'm just working on the outlines, just like the story summaries and kind of batting them around. And I'm basically just going to keep working on these stories until one of them is ready to draw. And whichever one is ready to draw first is the one that I'm going to do. But I would say that, I really went long-winded. Specifically in my case of writing, let me just undo those last couple of strokes. In my case of writing, it really is just a matter of, much like drawing, dedicating a certain amount of time every day to doing it. And whether it's, an hour a day that you have to write, whether it's 5 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, whatever it is to sit down and just keep producing work. Because sometimes, particularly with writing, I think it's harder to assess what's working and what's not working while you're in the thick of it. That's something where I think you need to kind of write it, have a little chance to sit down, look at it afterwards, see how you feel about it. I think there is something to be said for writing where, much like painting, you can do that with paintings or illustration where you're working on it, it's not working out, you sit to the side for a little bit and come back later, and then you can see the answer. I think that's just as true in writing as well. So yeah, and then having some books on deck to read. Like right now, I am actually reading some nonfiction. I'm reading a biography on the children's author Roald Dahl, the guy who wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Witches and James and the Giant Peach. And he used to be he used to work in the British Embassy. He used to be a Royal Air Force fighter pilot. Had a very interesting life before he became a children's book author. He's also known for being somebody who could be very problematic, a bit of a bully sometimes. The book paints a very interesting picture of him where he's beloved not just by fans of his books, but by people in his life, that he was a fantastic and loving person, and then also people who knew him as a very unpleasant and negative person. And I think that contrast between I think that the complexities of the human mind and spirit are interesting. So when I found out that this person, it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to hear about a bunch of dirt on him. I wanted to read a story about a person who had a lot of conflicting and complex sides to themselves. So I've been reading that. And then I've also been reading a bunch of nonfiction art books. Like I've been reading Dave Gibbons' book on creating comics. I forget the exact title. It might just be Dave Gibbons on making comics. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's a great book. It's a dense book, and it's an art book with a lot of educational material in it. I mean, it really is more of a how-to, not in a tutorial sense, but it's kind of like what I do on my my Patreon and what I'm doing here, where he just shows you a bunch of his work and then says, this is the process I did for this. This is how I solved this problem. This is how I approach these things. So it's the Dave Gibbons Patreon. I've been reading some comics too for a while. I finally finished reading the last volume of Warren Ellis's The Wildstorm, which is his revisiting of the Wildstorm universe and kind of contemporizing it, streamlining it for a contemporary audience. Because I mean, I guess the originals came out, 15... I don't know how long ago, like The Authority was. 15, maybe even 20 years ago now. It was quite a while ago that series was there. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I'm a fan of Warren Ellis's writing in general. I am avoiding the temptation for now of reading his the Batman's Grave series he's doing with Brian Hitch, because as awesome as that is and right up my alley, I definitely want to keep it. I like to keep a mix of what I'm reading. I usually like to have a fiction book going, a nonfiction book going, and then a comic book going. Problem being is that usually when I read comics, I'll read one graphic novel and I get so into it that I want to just read the next, like another volume or more work by that creator, and I don't, stay into the rotation that I'm trying to have. And it's interesting because I used to read. When I say a rotation, I used to read one book at a time. I would read that fiction book. I would finish it. And I would start a comic book or a graphic novel, and I would read that and finish it. And then I would start a nonfiction book and read that and then finish it. And now I'm sort of all over the place. I've got I've actually got probably 3, 4, 5 books in various states of starting to read it, finishing to read it. Oh, and I see Writing Comics is in the chat. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for dropping by. Yes. So, in terms of that process, having multiple things that I'm reading and I'm interested in, and a lot of it, some of it is me interested just because I'm interested, and some of it is me interested in terms of its actual research for particular books that I want to write in the future. So back to this piece, So really just simple. I'm thinking that this red on white, nice and creepy. I'm still going to go in and add some more flat colors and some variations before I go deeper. I'm trying to decide whether I want this watch to be silver or gold. And right now, I'm leaning towards silver will tie into the white and keep it all in the light color scheme. If I make it gold, it's going to tie into the background and disappear. So I think that for now, I'm just going to put in a medium gray for the pocket watch. And in the end, it'll end up being silver. You know what? Well, let me go ahead and fill it in, and then I can worry about tweaking it and getting it to the exact color, because then I can kind of see the thing all at once. But yeah, I mean, in my instinctually, I probably would have just made the watch gold. And in some of the previous color comps, the previous color thumbnails I did, that's exactly what it was. It was a gold watch. But now in this simpler, more of a flat color scheme, I feel like like silver will tie the watch to the rabbit. Yeah, I'm just repeating myself. I don't want it to get lost in the background. You know what's interesting is as I'm doing this, these colors on the iPad, it kind of gives you a chance to see my line work closer than you would see it when I'm normally just inking, because I don't necessarily move the camera in and out, bring it closer. And I will bring the camera down and give you a closer view at some points, but I don't necessarily get it as close as you're seeing right now. So you can kind of see the big chunky lines in there, the places where I go thick lines versus thin lines, places like, for instance, using a ellipse template. You know, I think I only used an ellipse template on the outer part. Yeah, I definitely only used it on the outer part of the clock, of the stopwatch, because you can see how loose these lines on the inside going around the clock face are. Okay. Whoop. There must be some openings in the, let's see here now. There we go. In a way, it kind of reminds me of when I first started using Photoshop. And when I was trying to color comics, just the idea of using the paint bucket, it used to be that I can remember when I first started using Photoshop, it would be more like you would actually use the paint bucket and color in between the lines. For instance, I would, I'm not going to do it here because I don't want to really mess up the drawing. Well, I think I have it unlocked, I'm unlocking it. But I would use the paint bucket and I would like paint bucket right in this area, and it would like fill up just this, but you wouldn't get like the little cracks in between there. And then you have to go to the next spot you wanted and paint bucket that and just move your way around the form and the figure. You know, and as I'm looking at this, I kind of want to see how it looks if I make the rabbit shirt red. This is starting to remind me of Hair Star from Preacher. I can't remember if he wears red shirts in the, oh no, it's just white shirts and red ties. I still haven't finished the final season of Preacher. I am enjoying it, just, you know, it's that constant battle to both find time to find artwork and find time to watch stories that inspire you, read books that inspire you, find that balance between consuming art and creating art. that always feels like a challenge to me because I think we do need to have our creative tanks, that creative well, refilled and replenished. Yeah, still haven't seen the last Star Wars movie. Over the holidays, every time my wife and I wanted to go see it, there was seats, like, even buying seats beforehand online. The theaters were full. There was no good time that we necessarily wanted to. We were also kind of busy with other stuff, other family obligations. So, I don't know. We may go see it before it's out of the theaters. We may end up waiting until it's streaming. I presume it'll be on Disney Plus, which we don't have, but even if they're making stuff exclusively on their streaming, I'm sure they're gonna have something where, like, if you've got cable or HBO or something, you can still, not HBO. It's not gonna be on HBO, but what I'm thinking of is the way you can rent on-demand videos directly from your cable provider. So it's not necessarily you're watching it on HBO or Cinemax or whatever. I don't know if Disney plans to withhold their streaming content from cable providers for video on demand. If they are, then hell, I may end up having to sign up for Disney Plus. We'll see. I think my big reason for not wanting to sign up for Disney Plus, it's not just that we already have, like, well, no, it is. We have other things to watch. I don't want to encourage myself to spend more time watching TV because that life is all about the double-edged swords. Yes, you need to fill that creative well, but I always, whenever I'm watching something, and I think a lot of you guys probably feel this too. Whenever you're watching a TV show, whenever you're reading a book, whenever you are doing something that is not making art, I personally feel that nagging sensation in the back of my mind that I am letting art slip away from me. I'm letting creativity slip away from me. This is time. These are moments I'm never going to get back. And when I'm on my deathbed, I'm not going to wish I watched another episode of Rick and Morty, and I do love Rick and Morty. I'm going to wish I made another painting. I'm going to wish that I wrote another book. And it feels like each moment of entertainment is stealing from that pool of time that I have to make the things that's going to end up being my entire body of work over my life. So, you got to keep that creative well full and keep yourself inspired, but at the same time, I'm also fighting with that need to want to keep making. And that also is probably one of the reasons why my personal tastes, I like to try and watch stuff that's out of the ordinary. I try not to watch things that are just, comfort food television show, reality TV shows. And I can see how they're very entertaining and fulfilling. But for me, it's like if I only have a limited time to watch something, I want to watch something that's going to make me be a better artist. For instance, like a show like The Good Place. My wife and I really enjoy that. It's a comedy. It's fun. But they have these deeply philosophical arguments and discussions on the show. And, that's the whole plot revolves around these big questions of the afterlife and morality and judgment. And I find that in some way feels like it's adding to my creative pool, my creative process, To be fair, Rick and Morty has some pretty philosophical things too. They just, cover it in fart and shit jokes. But overall, it's always a double-edged sword for me. So, yeah, so far this, again, way more graphic than what I was doing in the color thumbnails. And I think that when I come back to the other ones, when I come back to the other pieces, I'm going to start with just a simple flat color. And this is one of the times when working in value, I don't know necessarily if it really helped me. What I may end up doing instead with this piece and I don't think it's going to, let me see here. I don't know if this has adjustment layers. I haven't actually tried. Let's see. You can make adjustments. You can't necessarily make adjustment layers. But let's say that, and plus I think that this adjustment would just work on the on the layer I have selected. I don't know if it would work on the whole piece. I'm just doing this because I'm curious if I were to, oh, because the layer's locked, cancel. All right. I was curious what would happen if I were to put a grayscale layer on this, convert this whole thing to black and white, because that's something we're working in color, and then having a black and white filter on top of it can help you look and say, if something's a little bit not reading or a little muddy, you look at the value and say, oh, this is why it looks wrong. The color, like you may think your colors are wrong, really your values are wrong. So being able to switch it to black and white, that's an interesting thing. I've never really thought about working that way. Instead of working value first, you just start working in color and then keep flipping it to black and white or grayscale to check and see whether things are reading and popping. So I'm working in color, but I'm correcting my values as I go. I've never tried working that way, and since it just occurred to me now, I'm telling you right here, I may try it. I may use it for a few months. It may end up being a horrible idea and a huge waste of time. So don't just jump on it just because I said it. I'm going to try it, see how it works, and then you guys might be like, if it works well, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll jump on that. Might be a train wreck. Don't know. Comments. Amar says he's right here with you, man. I need to get these 50 ideas out of my head. If I don't in some form, it will be a failure. Yeah, that's I definitely have that feeling. But it says hopefully via networking collabing, I can get that done in the next 10 years. He said Rick and Morty started out on YouTube as well, and was based on the Back to the Future character. Yeah, that's right. I remember. It's supposed to be Doc Brown and Doc and Marty instead of Rick and so it's Rick and Morty. And Amar says the graphic colors maybe harsh shadows will have more impact. Yeah, so far, like just getting to this level alone, I definitely feel like this. Well, it captures the horror feel that I was going for. It definitely feels sort of Stephen King-esque, just sort of like the red and the white and the black of the shadows. So let's see here. But that thing about if I don't get these ideas out in some form, they'll feel like a failure. That's something that I have been struggling with. And I've been struggling with it in the sense that I think that I was making myself kind of unhappy to a certain degree with the level that I have been chasing and pursuing and trying to get better. Like, I mean, obviously I do want to get better as an artist and as a writer, as a creator. But to a certain degree, I think that I was giving myself a little bit of a neurosis in this constant chasing. And so now I'm looking at it more of, let's say, like I'd like to think that as I keep producing work, I'm going to improve. Yep. Wrong layer. There we go. It's a little closer to silver, a little silvery. What was I saying? Let's say that let me rewind. I haven't been spending as much time working on just my draftsmanship and just practicing art. Even though I show you videos of me working on figure drawing, I don't feel like my day-to-day figure drawing practice is living up to the level of skill that I want to, the amount of time I need to put into it to grow and get better. And in some cases, I feel like I've been backsliding. So let's say that I am as good a visual artist as I'm ever going to get. And at a certain point, I just need to embrace that. Now, I do think I can still get better. I feel like there's hope for me. But when I say them as good as I can get, I'm not saying I'm awesome. I'm saying let's say that my skill set is limited. Let's say that there's some sort of cap on what I'm capable of, and I'm not going to get any better. And the tools I have now, which are, I still cannot create art at the level that I personally want. It's not at the quality that I want. But let's say that where I'm at is the cap. That's it. I'm not going to get any better. So I just have to make do with the tools I have. In that case, what then becomes, how do I approach going forward if this is the most I'm ever going to be able to do? That doesn't mean I'm going to stop trying to improve. Pardon me, have to sneeze. Doesn't mean that I'm going to stop trying to improve. But what happens if I'm as good as I'm going to get? And in that case, and also considering the fact that while I make income from comics, it is by far not my main source of income. My day job is. And I said, what if I never am able to make a full, what if I'm never able to make comics full time? What if I will never be at the point where I get up every morning, I wake up, I make comics, I get down to the drawing table at the start of the workday, I draw, go to lunch, come back from lunch, draw. At the end of the day, put my work, make sure I make time to make my work available to sell, go to conventions and market it, put it online. If that never happens, and I never have a large body of work, in that case, who am I really making comics for? I mean, that's a question I think that people ask from a marketing standpoint of, finding your audience and being able to market your work properly. But when I'm asking it from an internal question, am I making comics for me? Am I doing this because it makes me happy? And I think the time that I spend writing and drawing makes me happy. I think a lot of the other business stuff doesn't make me as happy. It doesn't mean that I want to go out and seek and find a publisher. I like also having the control of doing it all myself. I just don't necessarily enjoy as much of the work. But the question remains, who am I doing this for? And if I'm doing it for me to make me happy, then how does that change what I'm choosing to make and how I'm choosing to make it? And it becomes a complicated question because what I want is to make art and comics that look even better than what I currently make. So you can see how it starts chasing its own tail in terms of this questioning. I'm making it for me to a certain degree before my audience. It needs to satisfy me in terms of this process to make it worthwhile for me to put all this energy into it, because it would be a different thing if I had an audience that was banging down my door. If every issue of a comic I published was selling thousands of copies and people were constantly emailing me say, when's the next issue coming out? What are you working on next? We've got to see all your stuff. We want it more and more and more. Like, people are always clamoring for Stephen King's work. People are clamoring for J.K. Rowling's work. There's lots of creators that people are just hounding creators for just, please give us more. We love what you make. I'm not there yet. Be nice if I ever do get there. But if I never get there, what is the process and the nature, both internally, for me personally, what does it look like and feel like for me to make artwork that's just for me? And what does that artwork look like? How does it change it if I'm only making it to make me happy? Does it mean that I work way slower and every comic has to be a masterpiece? Does it mean that I just start doing my comic books as like sketchbooks, but with word balloons and dialogue? I don't know. This is sort of a friend of mine asked me, my buddy Carl Alstetter said, are you having because we were talking a little bit about this when I was talking about my feeling of backsliding. And he said, are you having sort of a creative crisis? And I said, hell yes. So we're going to talk more about that next time we have a chance to hang out and get together. But yeah, I am having sort of a personal creative crisis in terms of, it's not that I'm going to stop making artwork. I'm not going to stop sharing what I make with you guys here online. It's more of, and yeah, it's super selfish and narcissistic. How is this going to be fulfilling for me? That is the question. This takes so much work. How do I really make it worth it on a personal level? So, more comments in the chat. Let me catch up here. And by the way, if you guys have any more questions while we're going, get them in now because we're already at 11:54. 4, so we're going to wrap up shortly after noon. So if you guys have any more questions, things I didn't get to, or questions about the piece as I'm going, drop those in there. Meanwhile, I'm going to dial back and we're going to get back into the chat here for a second. So, Amar also, in terms of the coloring, says, I would keep it like this and add harsh shadows, but keep the other tones, harsh shadows and other tones, but keep the color simple. It's a good note, thank you. We said, we talked about this before. I just know I spent 20 years or more second guessing myself. So the time is now, and since I've pushed my perfectionism and what ifs out the window. See, I like that, pushing perfectionism out the window. That's actually, I'm going to come back to the rest of your comments, but what you said right there is what my crisis is. It's not about stopping working. It is, what does my work become when I push my perfectionism out the window? What does my work look like when I stop trying to make everything as good as possible? I don't know yet. And to a certain degree, I'm afraid to let go of that because part of me still does want to improve as an artist. And also, what I see in my mind when I stop trying to be perfect is work I've created in the past. Like, I stand by my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. I think it's a good book. I think it's enjoyable. I think it's entertaining. I think it's worth people reading. That said, both on the writing and the drawing, there's lots of things that I'm like, that could be better. And it's letting go of that. I feel like you know what, these days I think I'm getting a lot more out of these live streams than you guys are. Like, it's almost becoming personal therapy, talking to you guys about what's going on in my head. So again, thank you guys for being here. You especially, Amar. But you guys really are actually helping me. Just talking about a lot of this out loud. I don't know what my work looks like if I give up my perfectionism. Like, my perfectionism has allowed me to get better. Like, I think when I look at this piece that I did, that I'm coloring right now, the Alice in Wonderland piece, it is better than I have drawn in the past. But it is still a far cry from being what I imagine a great piece of artwork that I've created will look like in my head. So, there's that conflict of continuing to grow. But yeah, I'm not sure what that's going to look like if I let go of the... Going to go back to the chat. Because that's a whole rabbit hole that I don't even know what the bottom of it is. Which, drawing the white rabbit hole. But Amar continues. He's got a lot of great comments here. And if you haven't, you should check out, click on his link in the chat and go to his channel. Check him out. He's sharing much like I share my creative process, he's doing a lot more 3D building in Blender, doing 3D animation, as well as also creating comics and stories. It's interesting seeing someone else, seeing another creative process. So definitely check out his channel. Let's see here. He says, I feel I've capped my skill. I can only learn technique and some other things as far as draftsmanship, but I'm comfortable because I know my biggest issue is being lazy in regards to drawing specific things. I will do all of my ideas for free. If it generates an audience or not, the goal is to take the plants I have and plant them. That's what next year of my third year plan is for. This is the year I need to finish 2 or 3 more issues written, and at least 2 issues of my comics done this year. I plan to pay for marketing this year and next year when it works out. Once I get eyes on what I do, I will be using that as a vehicle for other creatives as well. That sounds like a great plan, man. Yeah, the marketing side for me, most of my marketing has been either this channel and sharing work with you, or it's been going to conventions. That's been kind of the bulk of my my marketing as it stands. Now that's troubling. I did a color drop, and I did it right here in the middle, and it didn't... Okay. I was wondering why. You know what? That is something that I did notice. Another tip that I got, that I saw, was taking a layer. All right, unlock. Nope, that's not what I want. What I want is to select this layer and lower the opacity. And I thought that you could do that. Whoop, undo. I thought that lowering the opacity was simply dragging across the screen horizontally on a layer. So again, things that I need to learn about how to properly do this. But but the idea was to color, to do this flatting portion with the lines on a slightly lower opacity, such that I could see when I didn't completely fill in a layer, as opposed to having to do this where I'm actually turning. Hang on, turn this back on, make sure I didn't draw on the okay, I just want to make sure. See, this is why I just leave this layer locked, because it keeps me from screwing it up. But turning it off will allow me to just fill that. God, this looks so jagged. I mean, I know that they are flats, but I'm probably going to make this darker. I don't know if I want to make it darker and then lighten up in terms of rendering on it, but try to get that sort of fleshy, that pulpy, fleshy inside of the mouth feel. Oh, okay. So Amar says you click on the layer once and then you can click and drag to change the opacity. Click on the layer M with the blending modes. The M will display. Ah, there we go. All right. So we'll go on this. Wait a minute. Hang on. Unlock. There we go. Drop that down to 50%. Thanks, Amar. Lifesaver. See, great creative, gives great advice, knows Procreate. Should definitely be following his channel. He'll make you a better artist. All right, guys. So the hour just flew by. Again, I haven't gotten a ton finished on this yet. I think I may end up doing a color hold on a lot of the black and change it to maybe a purple. I don't know. We're going to play with this, because just graying this down a little bit, lowering the opacity, I feel like keeping the lines on the White Rabbit solid, but then maybe graying down the rest, masking them out partially, the background lines, or just, playing with the hue saturation, doing a color hold on them. That might give me a really interesting effect. But so far, this is what we've got for now. Nice, creepy albino rabbit, white rabbit there. Okay, well, it always seems like I don't get enough done whenever I'm showing you guys. I mean, I think that's the nice thing about the time lapses, and I think I said that last time I was on live, is that with the time lapse, at least you see me getting a lot of work done. Speaking of work done, if you would like to get, an additional live stream once a month, I'm doing my my art book study group on Patreon. You go to patreon.com/GER As a side note, I'm going to be, once I get these pieces done, although I'm going to be making prints for conventions, I am going to send postcards, physical postcards, to all of my patrons that have their address available. Because when you sign up for Patreon, you can give your mailing address if you want. So if you guys also want to get a free postcard, well, not a free postcard because you're supporting the channel. If you would like to get a postcard, hop on a Patreon and at least follow it so you can see what kind of stuff I post. Because there is stuff I post that's public on there. So you can go over there, and even if you don't sign up to pay, you can follow my Patreon the same way that you follow someone on Instagram or Twitter. So go over there and check that out. You may decide you want to grab one of those postcards when I make them available. Got to finish the artwork first. Then, if you'd like to read some of my comics for free, you can go to news.jeremy.net. I'm actually working on this month's newsletter shortly after I finish this, and hopefully it'll go up for the end of the day, if not early next week. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comics or read them on Amazon Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That's GERIMI.net. And you can, I'll forward you to my Amazon author page. So, guys, thank you so much. Amar says thanks again for the stream. Fun as always. Oh, and he says, don't forget, you can export all of these steps as a time lapse when I'm drawing in Procreate. Yes, very true. I'm going to have to do that. Yes, thank you for the tips. You really do got your marketing head on. All right, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you spending time with me. That's it for now. Go be creative.